Hi, everyone. I hope you're all having a great day so far, and thank you so much for joining us. Today's webinar is about connecting the dots on what it means to be federated via Flipboard. And this event has been made especially for creators and curators we federated last week, so welcome. So in case you don't know me, my name is Mia. I'm Flipboard's head of creator community. I've worked here since 2011, if you can believe that. I love culture, curation, and community. And you can find me on Mastodon at miaq@flipboard.social and at mia@flipboard.com. And hopefully by the end of this presentation, you'll understand the difference. I know that's a big thing that we're here to talk about. So before we get into it, I just want to go through a few housekeeping rules. This call is set for 30 minutes and I have a lot of material to go through. So it's possible I might go a few minutes over. I'm not going to stop and answer questions as we try to capture and answer your most pressing questions throughout the course of this presentation. That said, please don't hesitate to put questions and comments in the chat. I'm not able to monitor it while I'm giving this presentation, but my colleague Jessica Jordan, who many of you know, is monitoring everything there and will be sharing helpful links, resources, and tips. And we plan to do a recap post in about a week. So you'll be able to find that along with a video of this presentation on our blog at about.flipboard.com and on Medium at Flipboard. We'll also use your comments and questions as fodder for upcoming posts and tutorials. Please keep questions related to Fediverse and Flipboard Federation. And we know that some people here will have questions about our creator programs. You can always direct those questions to creators@flipboard.com. I know we're a little bit behind in answering some of those emails, but we do see everything there and appreciate your patience, and we will eventually get to it. So thank you again. So today's event has 3 sections. Part 1 contains the basics about what the Fediverse is and its benefits, specifically for creators. And we really hope that this section gives you some context about why Flipboard is taking down its walls and wants to be a part of this movement. Part 2 is about what it looks like to have your Flipboard profile federated. So we'll start with a timeline of our rollout just for context so you can see where we are in this evolution. Then we'll have an overview of what federation looks like for profiles, for magazines and posts, and how it all works. And we'll follow that with some tactics for how you and your magazines can get discovered in the Fediverse. And part 3 contains a couple of the biggest questions we've seen you ask in the Flipboard user group and other places since the launch. So what is the Fediverse? The Fediverse stands for Federated Universe, and it is a network of open source social networks like Mastodon and Threads that are interconnected yet independent. So when you're part of the Fediverse, it doesn't matter which network you share to. The posts get distributed to the whole ecosystem. And since the Fediverse is decentralized, there isn't one company that owns your data, sets the rules, or keeps your followers within a walled garden. So you might be asking, why do I need another social network, let alone several of them? Why is this better than the social media we have today? And of course, what's in it for me? And it's helpful to understand some of the benefits for creators to know why it's worth playing here. So for one, the Fediverse is where people who are fed up with traditional social media and dysfunction at places like X are flocking to. And this means there's a new burgeoning audience to discover your work. Even better, by us federating your Flipboard account, you are able to leverage your Flipboard curation to reach people in the Fediverse. So you don't need a lot of extra effort required to get in front of new readers. Anecdotally, we're hearing that there's much stronger engagement in the Fediverse. So even with fewer followers than on traditional social media, people are reporting a higher ratio of comments, likes, and boosts. And we've seen this on both our personal and company accounts, and it also seems like the quality of conversation and community is a lot higher in the Fediverse. And then a promise of the Fediverse is that it's structured to allow portability. So while this isn't fully functional just yet across the ecosystem, The Fediverse is built in such a way that, in theory, lets you keep your followers if you decide to move to a different network. So unlike traditional social media where if you leave Instagram, you also have to leave all your followers behind, in the Fediverse, there is the promise of owning the audience you work so hard to build. Now, I'd like to take a step back and paint a picture of what the Fediverse looks like as a whole. So as I said, it's a series of independent yet interconnected and interoperable networks. So each of those networks has a unique focus, community, and vibe. Mastodon is one of the most well-known and biggest networks, and it functions a lot like X. Threads from Meta is also for microblogging, but it has a pretty different community from Mastodon. Flipboard is curated news for all your interests. PixelFed is similar to Instagram. PeerTube is like YouTube. Lemmy works like Reddit. Bookworm looks like Goodreads. Funkwhale is like Spotify, so you get the idea. And within some of these networks, like on Mastodon, there are individual communities called instances. Now, instances are run by independent administrators, and each instance has its own guidelines and rules. Back in February 2023, Flipboard dipped its toe in this world by standing up our own instance called flipboard.social, which I know some of you are already a part of. And that was a way for us to get started in the Fediverse and quickly learn by doing. Since all of this is somewhat new, it's worth taking a quick detour to understand the technology that makes this possible. So all of these networks are built on top of an open source protocol called ActivityPub that enables them to be seamlessly interoperable. It's akin to how it doesn't matter what email client you use, it all just works. So ActivityPub makes it possible to be on Mastodon and see content from Threads and Flipboard all in one place. Put another way, it's as if you had one home feed and you saw and could interact with updates from the people you followed on Instagram, X, YouTube, and Spotify. In other words, as a consumer, you are at the center of your social media universe, not the platform that you're on. And as a publisher, there are multiple flexible ways to reach that consumer. This is pretty cool, right? So hopefully by now, you're starting to get a sense of how developers and the Fediverse community are building a better social web than we've had to date. Now, I've talked about the benefits for creators, but here are 5 benefits of the ecosystem at large. And I've already talked a lot about interoperability, so hopefully that point is clear. It's a really big one. So number 2 is about diversity of communities. You get to choose your home in the Fediverse. Now your home is already Flipboard since you've been federated, but people who are not part of our community might find a home on another network or on any one of the thousands of instances on Mastodon. Again, flipboard.social is one example of those Mastodon instances. Other examples include me.dm, which is for Medium's community, mastodon.art for artists on Mastodon, and indieweb.social, a community focused on the open web, Fediverse, and humane technology. So as I've said before, the possibility of audience portability, the promise of the Fediverse, is that you can switch your home base at any time with little to lose. So decentralization is another big benefit, and it's sometimes why you might hear the Fediverse being talked about as part of Web3, where decentralization is a core principle. So decentralization means that there isn't one single entity or company that makes the rules. And one really cool implication of this is that algorithms don't rule the home feed in the Fediverse. What you want is what you get. Another benefit of being decentralized is that the ecosystem can be more resilient. An outage or a disruption doesn't take down the whole platform because the ecosystem is made up of many interconnected nodes all hosted in different places. And lastly, there's definitely a refreshing vibe around open source software and communities. It feels like the motivation is largely centered around public good and innovation, and there's a real spirit of collaboration that's fun to be a part of. Just going to take a drink of water. So I won't spend too long on this timeline, but we wanted to show you where we are in the process of taking down Flipboard's walls to become part of the Fediverse. So we started this work more than a year ago with the launch of our own instance at flipboard.social. And we allowed people to connect their flipboard.social master account to Flipboard. In April 2023, we brought our editorial expertise to the Fediverse by setting up our accounts for our editorial desks around news, technology, culture, science, and art and photography. These have become respected channels with sizable followings and are great places for us to amplify your magazines and your work. In December, we began the process of federating our platform itself with 25 handpicked publishers. And in February of this year, we expanded that to 150 publishers and magazines. And fast forward to last week, we extended our first invites to a select group of creators and power curators, and that's all of you. Now I'd like to move on to the anatomy of Flipboard federation. So your Flipboard account in the Fediverse is for sharing curated news and information around your interests. What you see on the left is my profile on Flipboard, which should look familiar to all of you. What's new is I've got my Fediverse handle under my name. Now your Fediverse handle should always begin with an @ sign. So it's at my Flipboard username and another and at flipboard.com. So it's at mia@flipboard.com. That's my handle for my Flipboard profile in the Fediverse. Now you can't see this in this picture, but if I tap on my follower account where it says 72,000 followers, I can see the breakdown of my followers on Flipboard and my followers in the Fediverse. Now on the right side is how my Flipboard profile presents in Mastodon's mobile app. You'll note that my follower count is a lot lower than it is on Flipboard. And that's because the Fediverse sees your Flipboard federated profile as a new account and the count starts at 0. A super important tip is if you want to edit your Flipboard federated profile or change anything about it, just make those changes on Flipboard itself and they will syndicate out to the Fediverse. So people can follow you and everything you post in the Fediverse by following your profile, or they can just follow the magazines about the topics they're interested in. And this is an organizing principle that isn't really available anywhere else in the Fediverse. For example, let's take a publisher like ESPN. I might be interested in basketball and don't really care for other sports news. So I can follow just ESPN's basketball magazine and ensure my home feed contains exactly what I want it to. So I want to show you what this looks like with 3 different magazines that I have, each one with a different purpose. So the first use case is my magazine Mia's Q, which is where I flip each issue of my weekly Substack newsletter. By flipping each newsletter edition into this magazine, it's also being sent out to the Fediverse, which you can see on the right. And again, if I ever want to change this magazine's description in the Fediverse, I just make the change on Flipboard and it will update shortly after. Concert Queen is an example of a personal interest magazine. It's where I flip articles about concerts and festivals, including some of my own photos from shows I've seen, like this Tyler, the Creator cover. Again, set the cover on Flipboard and it will translate to the Fediverse. And this is a group magazine I started for people who love paper and digital collage. In it, we share articles together and art that inspires us. Now, many of you participate in our exchanges and/or you run your own group magazines. A really important thing to know here is that only contributors whose Flipboard accounts are federated will appear in the group magazine in the Fediverse. So if any of you have group magazines where not everyone is federated yet, my colleague Jessica will drop a form in the chat which anyone can use to apply for federation. Now keep in mind there is a selection criteria which I will share later. A powerful part of Flipboard's Fediverse integration is that now your notifications from the Fediverse are visible in the Flipboard app. We're one of the first platforms to allow this intermingling of notifications from different networks. Now let's move on to what you can do to help your posts, your profile, and your magazines get discovered in the Fediverse. So a really important tip is to use Flipboard's caption area and add hashtags when flipping the story on Flipboard so that the post will also appear in corresponding topics in the Fediverse. For example, this post, which I tagged with art, painting, and oil painting, also appeared within those topics in the Fediverse. And please note, you do not need to literally use the hashtag Flipboard, or hashtag Fediverse in your posts. It overcrowds those topic feeds where people expect to be reading news about Flipboard or about the Fediverse, not unrelated items tagged with those things. So that's just a tip. Now let's say you want to find your magazine's handle so that you can share it in the Fediverse. You can get that unique address, which again will always start with an @ sign, by clicking on the 3-dot menu on your magazine cover and selecting Copy Federated Handle. In the Fediverse, the handles will look like the list here on the right. Now we know that there's been some confusion when searching for yourselves in the Fediverse. People have seen what looks like multiple profiles in the search results. You'll see that one is your profile and the others are your magazine feeds, and all of them are followable, just like on Flipboard. And we realize this isn't a perfect solution, but until there are more sophisticated ways to share feeds associated with your profile, this was just a way to get started, and we hope to improve this in the future. Now it's time to get creative and experiment with finding your audience in the Fediverse. One idea to get a magazine out to interested people is to create a text post on Flipboard introducing the magazine, like I've done here. Again, don't forget to use hashtags so people in the Fediverse interested in these topics might also find it. In this example, you can see that my text post in my Concert Queen magazine was also distributed in the festival feed in the Fediverse, which you can see on the right. Now, some of you already had Mastodon's accounts before you were federated last week, or maybe you're federated on Threads too. Since the systems are interconnected, you can use those accounts to cross-promote in a genuine way. For example, I recently wrote a post telling people in the Fediverse about the last 5 magazines I updated. I'm trying to help people understand what I care about and show them that they can just follow what interests them too. Of course, there are also tried and true tactics like adding buttons, badges, and links to your Fediverse presence, to your website, your newsletters, your LinkedIn profiles, and more. And if you're doing any of these things, we'd love to see them. Please send screenshots for future case studies and blog posts to curators@flipboard.com. So I will say people have a lot of fun with trending hashtags on Mastodon, and it feels really good to participate in these, to feel like you're part of the community. For example, the photography vertical has some great ones, like Believe in Film for analog film buffs. It's really inspiring content there. Follow Friday is another trending hashtag that seems to have good momentum, and it's a really fun way to show someone you appreciate them. And on the right, we have Jennifer of Sidewalk Safari keeping Travel Tuesday alive in the Fediverse. So it's really worth familiarizing yourself with these trends within your verticals and participate in an authentic way. I think it's worth repeating that a really refreshing thing about the Fediverse is that it's not ruled by mysterious or fickle algorithms. Whatever anyone decides to follow, whether it's all your posts or just ones from your specific magazines, they'll be able to see them in their home feed in reverse chronological order. Now, I just love that it's kind of back to basics in this department. I mean, I can actually see posts from people I follow. What a novel idea. So that was a lot, and hopefully I've answered your most pressing questions and giving you some helpful context for understanding how the Fediverse works. And for the next few slides, we've compiled some of the most frequently asked questions that we've seen being asked in Flipboard user group and other places. The first question we hear of a lot is around how to tell what traffic comes from the Fediverse. So just like on Flipboard, articles in the Fediverse open up to your own site and count as traffic to your site. In principle, you should see that traffic in your analytics dashboard on Google Analytics or whatever tool you use. For example, here are the referrals within my Medium stats for one of my posts, and you can see threads showing up here. If you are starting to see Mastodon as a referral, please send us a screenshot at curators@flipboard.com. This is one area we are still learning about and hope to better understand. Another question revolves around something that also confused me when I got started. I was updating my magazines on Flipboard, but I saw nothing in the Fediverse. The reason is that federated profiles and magazine feeds must be followed by at least one account on a server to start updating. This is to conserve resources and is standard behavior on Mastodon. Once a profile and/or a magazine feed have been followed on the server you belong to, like flipboard.social or mastodon.social, and a new post is added, the feeds will begin to populate. Another question we've heard a lot is that you already have an account in the Fediverse. Why do you need another federated account? So there's no harm in having multiple accounts in the Fediverse. The key is to use them synergistically. So your Flipboard federated account can be your only Fediverse account, where you share curated stories, or you can have multiple Fediverse accounts, like a Mastodon account, a Threads account, and a Flipboard account, and approach posting on each in different ways, like how you would think of posting on Instagram versus LinkedIn. By federating your Flipboard account, you open your existing curation to more people. And the beauty of the Fediverse is that people can view and follow all of your social accounts, no matter what service they use. If you do not want to keep your flipboard.social profile active, we recommend creating a post with a call to action to follow your newly federated flipboard.com account and pin it to your profile. We're exploring ways to port or move your followers from flipboard.social to your flipboard.com account, but this feature does not exist today. You might be asking, how does one get federated from this point on, especially if you have contributors and group magazines who want to be involved? So we are currently only federating creators and curators who have 2 or more active magazines and no trust and safety issues. So you can apply via the form that Jessica will share in the chat. So I encourage you to follow our LinkedIn newsletter called FediCurious, or you can follow my FediCurious Flipboard magazine on Flipboard or in the Fediverse, where we write every other week about Fediverse basics and updates. We also repost these articles to our blog and to Medium too. And I plan to use a lot of the feedback and questions here to continue to write about these topics to help you really understand how to make the most value of this ecosystem. We also have a podcast where Flipboard CEO Mike McHugh interviews other leaders in the Fediverse. We publish new episodes as soon as we have them. So far, Mike's interviewed the co-author of ActivityPub, Evan Prodromou, the CEO of Medium, Tony Stubblebine, and soon we'll have an episode with the PM and engineer on Threads. And you can find .social on Flipboard's video instance at flipboard.video, on PeerTube, as well as on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcasts.